Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. Hungary's new government is seeking a reset in relations with Brussels after years of tensions over rule of law and corruption concerns. On Friday, Prime Minister PM Magyar is holding high-level talks with Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in Brussels as Budapest pushes to unlock billions of euros in frozen EU funds. At the same time, Hungary's position on Ukraine and minority rights remain under close scrutiny. Joining us today on TVP World is Orsolya Ráczová, analyst at the Eurasia Group. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
So looking at the latest developments, how significant would you say Peter Magyar's meeting with Ursula von der Leyen when it comes to resetting this relation and for Hungary's standing within Europe?
Yes, I think it is very important, although I have to say that we have been hearing about plenty of meetings already on a working and technical level between the Hungarian government, the Hungarian experts, as well as the EU, including the European Commission. So, of course, this meeting will be an official confirmation or feedback about where the talks are right now at or where they are heading. So it is important, but it is also important to know that there is already a lot of work behind all of this. So my understanding is that we will hear about the progress, specifically on the super milestones regarding the RRF funding, as well as how realistic it is to meet and satisfy these goals, and potentially how flexible the European Commission is if Hungary, for some reason, does not manage to fulfill all the criteria.
Right, like I mentioned, these discussions should not be held overnight, and of course a lot of things are under the works right now. This is more akin to like a status update, and we're going to see where things are going. So in the current state of Hungary, what kind of results would you be expecting?
So my expectation would be that the Hungarian government will present that which goals they will be able to meet under the strict deadline. As we know that Hungary, or Peter Magyar, has won with a constitutional majority, which essentially means that legally he should be able to satisfy all the criteria. The only problem is the time pressure, because there is an end of August deadline to meet this criteria. And for this reason specifically, it might not be able to fulfill all of them. In my view, realistically, they won't be able to meet all the criteria, but in exchange, the government will likely offer something else in case they are not able to satisfy specific criteria. And one of these, for example, will be to join the European Public Prosecutor's Office, which Hungary is not a member of. This is something that we have been hearing about for some time now, and I believe that this is kind of a gesture from the government side to show that their willingness to cooperate with Brussels, their willingness to comply, and if there is something that cannot be met, at least here is something else that they could offer. I think that does demonstrate their commitment to not just to meet the goals, but also their commitment specifically on the anti-corruption and the transparency agenda, which is a key part or key requirements to unlock EU funding, the RRF as well as other EU funding.
Right, like I mentioned, August deadline is quite tight, and even having a constitutional majority is quite difficult to dismantle the structure that was built beforehand. Do you see any kind of roadblocks, any existing infrastructure remaining from the Orbán era that's still needed to be dismantled that is slowing down the process?
Yes, I do, and maybe just to add that we are talking about an end of August deadline, but realistically, August is a slow month in Brussels, so the bulk of the work and the negotiations will have to take place in June and July. So technically we are talking about a bit less than 2 months. So this is again another limiting factor. Yes, Hungary is facing some challenges, some of them expected, some of them unexpected. There has clearly been some challenges with handing over the the power from the Orbán era. There is a bunch of documentation that has reportedly been destroyed. So this will slow down kind of the reform processes as well as the overview of what has been done and what's going on right now, including overview of public tenders, overview of specific procedures and how to change them. So there are some issues over those areas. There is another issue or a set of issues, and that is the resignation of key personnel. One of the first things Péter Magyar said, and if I remember correctly, he said this on election night already, he asked a number of people to resign from key positions, and that includes the head of the Constitutional Court as well as the president and the prosecutor general. And so far we have not seen any resignations. There is an end of month deadline, so technically they still do have the weekend, but I do not believe, based on what we have been hearing, that these people will resign, and some of them can delay the reform procedures. They likely cannot completely stop or inhibit them, but because they can delay them and because of the time pressure, this could be an issue.
All right, and like you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of goals that still need to be met, but then there's also some give and take, some negotiation process when it comes to how some of the funds will be released and what can Hungary give in return. So it does sound like a negotiation is ongoing. Now, one of the sticking points when it comes to Hungary and the European Union is always the Ukraine's EU membership as well, which Péter Magyar continues to link Ukraine's EU accession talks to the rights of the Hungarian minority within the country. Do you think that this negotiation process would give Brussels some kind of leverage to also ease off Hungary's stance on Ukraine?
That's a great question, and this has been interesting to see also for me personally as an ethnic minority, that Péter Magyar has been very strong on the ethnic Hungarian minority agenda, and so I do think that Magyar will push on this issue, on specifically demanding to see some updated or new legislation in Ukraine towards the ethnic minorities. Important to note that we are not just talking about Hungarians. There are other ethnic minorities in Ukraine, such as Russians. So I do think that they will keep pushing it. I think from the EU side, the argument could be more on the accession side, but I think that this would be rather on the informal level, not necessarily a formal criteria to be set from the European Commission. I do think that those discussions are separate, but informally, of course, everything is connected. One thing is that the Hungarian government was blocking the opening of the first accession chapter on Ukraine, and Péter Magyar has already said, I believe, that he is open to remove this veto, which of course still keeps Ukraine very, very far away from potentially joining the EU, but at least it is an important first step. And I do think that if the EU manages to open that first chapter with Ukraine, that already will be a big step. And I do think that Péter Magyar is willing to do that.
Right, and speaking of Ukraine, recently Péter Magyar also had a discussion with Mark Rutte as well, describing Hungary as once again becoming a reliable partner to NATO. But at the same time, also said that he would not be sending Ukraine weapons or military equipment as well. Now, just the most latest development actually see a NATO country kind of being attacked, or be it a stray drone or whatnot. We still don't know yet. But do you think that would change the strategic calculus of Hungary on this decision to not support Ukraine with weapons and equipment?
For now, I think that Péter Magyar will stick to his announcement and to his view that he will not support Ukraine with weapons and equipment. This has been one of his key electoral promises, and I don't think that he can change his mind too much on this. I can imagine some concession in the future, but I don't think that Péter Magyar in the near future will change his mind on this. Of course, the recent drone incident complicates the current security situation, not just in Romania, but as you said, in the region. The region has been on high alert for some time now, and especially Poland, the Baltics, and Romania. These kind of incidents have not impacted Hungary too much up until now. Of course, anything is possible because escalation, the likelihood of escalation after such attacks or incidents inevitably increasing, and the readiness should increase as well. I mean, we already saw that Romania already asked for more anti-drone systems. So I do see the discussion going towards that way, that we will see higher readiness, more discussions on how to increase our readiness and how to prepare for such incidents, specifically with drones, because there has been precedent for this, of course, but it's a completely other situation if you have to shoot down a drone, because the issue is that fallen debris can cause civilian injuries and casualties. And once you have civilian casualties, I think that's something that's going to completely change the discussion. As long as we are not seeing civilian deaths in these countries, we are talking mostly about, increasing our readiness, having scenarios, increasing, talking about our structure and decision making so that we can react quickly. But of course, once there are civilian casualties, that's going to be a completely different discussion, and we have to be ready for that.
Right, so we'll have to wait and see what's the results of these conversations and where Hungary will be standing after this when it comes to EU and NATO. But in the meantime, thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.